Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the wrap up. As always, I am your host, Monte Moore, and I just wanted to get on here today, kind of recap. Brian Gutekunst had a press availability today, and he was asked some pretty pointed questions. A lot of them were kind of interesting, um, kind of trying to gauge what his thought process is, but ahead of the draft here, the draft is only 3 days away, so there was some pretty good insight that he gave. Right out of the gate, he was asked, what did you like about Sammy Watkins? And I like that he said he's got good history in the league. He still has some juice left, and adding a vet wide receiver is something they wanted to do. So it definitely, points to that what we as fans have been, predicting. They want a guy in there that has done it in the league before the draft. We presume they're going to take some wide receivers, but they have a guy in the room and in the building that, has played the position at a pretty high level before. And it immediately followed up. Somebody asked, "Are you still in the market for another vet wide receiver?" And he didn't tip his hand, play his cards in any way. He just said, "Across the board, we're looking at everything. This draft is important to see where we are, and then after the draft, we'll move forward." So, however the board falls, it kind of feels like will shape the way they look at the position overall after this week. And that was immediately followed up by somebody asking, "Are you still discussing your board, or is it pretty much worked out by this point? The draft is just a couple days away." I like that he said there's conversation situationally. He said Matt LaFleur and I will get together, but over the weekend we got real comfortable with the board, and we'll try not to make a mistake, excuse me, at the last minute. So it sounds like they kind of know where they're going. They have a way, they kind of have a feel for how the board's going to work out, and basically just stick to your guns at this point, right? Gut instinct is what you roll with at the last minute. You don't change your plan. Um, and he was asked about if Gary and Savage, they were in that same draft class, so they're both up for fifth-year options. He said they're excited for both of their futures, but we'll get to that after the draft as things play out. So kind of feels like, based on the guys they take, how the board falls, those where they see each position after the draft is when they make that decision. As we know, they just hired special teams coordinator Rich Bisaccia, and he's pretty much getting carte blanche with the special teams, it seems like. So somebody asked, you have multiple seventh round picks. Are you going to prioritize special teams more than you would in any typical year? As we know, their special teams was a huge weak point. So I like that he said Rich has been heavily involved. On the third day of the draft, we're looking at the way that those guys can make your football team. That's certainly a big part of the conversation. So they already signed a corner from Vegas, specifically that Bisaccia has already worked with as a special teams guy. So it really does seem like that's still going to be a point of emphasis that they're going to have. So as we get, into those day three picks, it's going to be interesting to see the angles that they take here. And he was asked specifically, when you look at what you've lost, obviously hinting at Devontae Adams, is it more important this year to look at a specific position like wide receiver? And he gave an answer I don't think any Packers fan is going to be surprised by. He said the draft is the lifeblood of our football team. The resources and energy reflect that we've put in. It's always been that way, and I'm excited about the team that we have coming back. So they like what they've got. Obviously, they know where the weaknesses are, where they're going to be looking in the draft. But it definitely does not sound like they're in panic mode in any way. In terms of we have to jump up, we have to take two or three receivers because that's where we have a dearth of talent at the moment. And as we know, Goody and the scouting staff in general, they kind of have their tendencies, right? They like taking younger guys. They like taking highly athletic guys. Somebody asked, there are older guys in this draft specifically because of the COVID year. Is that something that factors into your decision making? And he did say it's something we haven't seen a lot of in the past. The volume at the bottom of the draft of guys who came back for 1 year because of that COVID year. And he said they judge the merits of what they've done in the past, versus just this most recent year. So when you're talking about, and it kind of factors into how they view Jordan Love, because, Jordan Love, he had that great sophomore season, had a not as strong junior year. So they're not looking at the most recent body of work. He definitely made it a point to note that they're viewing the entire body of work overall. And just a couple more here. Obviously, after all the drama and the hubbub during the draft last year, he was asked, will you talk to Aaron? Is he going to have significant input in this year's process? And he kind of, he gave a very standard, reasonable answer. He said, we're in constant communication. The specifics of what we talk about, I'm not going to get into, but it carries over from what we've been doing for the last year and a half. So it definitely seems like, that he's still going to be part of this process. Obviously, Goody's not going to get up here and say, we're going to go to him and ask who we should get. He's not going to talk about the extent of their communication, but he did kind of make it a point to make sure to say that, Aaron is going to be involved in some way in the process. And I just wanted to wrap up here and finish with, I like that somebody specifically asked, is it better for a rookie the way the league has been going to watch other guys on the team establish themselves and kind of learn by watching, or is it better for them to get out there and go play? And he said very specifically, it depends on the player. When you have guys come in, you can find a guy, he likes them to find a guy in the team that they respect. He can get, in their hip pocket and learn everything you can, because it's one thing to hear from coaches, front office people, but to hear from guys on the team, your teammates, your peers, especially in your position group, that's priceless. Until then, we will talk to you guys on draft night, unless any other big news breaks. But until then, thanks for tuning in, and always go Pack Go. Have a great night.